What's up, everybody? This is Sleep Atomic, and we're gonna do a post-finale season review. We're just gonna go by each episode, name them off, and then see what we remember about each episode, and then talk about the whole season. I won't look at my notes or anything like that, but I will read off the title of each episode and then go from there. Okay, episode 1, When You're Lost in the Darkness. And what I remember most about this is like when the infection starts to run its course and everything's chaotic and it's like a arcade shooter. That pretty much still stands and everything. It was pretty great setup for everything else that's to happen. And maybe on a rewatch, I'll see if it reminds me of like other games through the years, but it's definitely the genre of arcade shooters. It had the most tragedy and the most hectic feel. And now that I'm mentioning, I guess it's like a different kind of like panic each episode. But I'll try to stay on this and maybe I'll remember as I'm going to the next episode. When episode 2, which is named Infected, where Tess, Joel, and Ellie go to Boston outside of the walls, away from Fedra, away from everything that they initially established. And really, this episode, they're like flexing their set muscles, showing off like their skills and everything, because this is a pretty good looking one, and you really get to see what Tess is really pouring her soul into and like what she's really hoping for, which was in Ellie in most aspects of her uh, aspirations, which she did not show at all. But thinking back to the final episode, I guess Joel, he is more fixated on himself now. He still was very loosely, like, barely on any pathway without, like, someone, like, having to adjust for or adjust to. Even though he's this big, strong looking, like, male character, it does not seem like he made it far from, like, needing a home and, like, guidance. And I guess this panic would be the known panic of already have foreknowledge of like the cordyceps and the network of them if you trigger anything. And this is where we really get the rundown, like if you didn't know before and why they're being so cautious. It seems more easily handled if you're a third person or an outsider from the whole situation. The panic already being dealt with and just subsided to it always being along everything they do. And then we got episode 3 with Bill and Frank called A Long, Long Time. And these two pretty much win the whole like survival thing because they make it so long that they just like take themselves off the board. Nothing ever breaching their plans, but the panic here is the need to keep things moving along and only because of someone you love and want to protect. And the only panic would be something outside your own control. And this is the only fruitful union that you see come together and eventually put itself to an end the whole season. Bill and Frank wins probably the best couple that has a most appealing ending in the cordyceps outbreak. I wonder sometimes if it would have gone different if they somehow like found like a child and that was somehow integrated to that, but that whole thing is relegated to it being for Joel. And that may be even what the note Bill leaves for Joel is referring to. It makes me wonder if he ever had that talk with Tess, but we go on to episode 4, Please Hold to My Hand. And we get to see like another version of a place that was controlled by Fedra, or even just a different big city. But we know further as we go along the from the east to west coast, the situations they run into become more and more severe and more isolated, relegated to only like a small group instead of a large city. But luckily, later in episode 6, the inverse is uh, available, and but it's only severely serene. Maybe surreal, not sure what word to put there. But in episode 4, you get to see the first like group of people organized without Fedra or the Fireflies. And the first time Ellie and Joel really get to have time alone with each other. You see how they get to interact, and then eventually Ellie does save them from the one attacker. And we first get to our own panic moment with who to follow and what to do. Ellie and Joel don't get to figure anything out until next episode, but the audience gets to see like what certain people, Kathleen, would want or even need to do with a group of people. And you see this with Perry, and he's just following along, but every now and then she gives like too much context or just any kind of context, which kind of has you questioning as the audience, and then possibly Perry of why they're even doing this, which at the time was hunting Henry and Sam, in which we could easily add in episode 5, Endure and Survive, where Kathleen at the end of this episode is not even concerned about any peripheral uh, losses or anything like that. And now that I mentioned Ellie saving Joel from that Brian kid, that might have even been Kathleen's son, and her with her speech of kids die all the time thing. She seems to have psychologically latched on to the one thing there, which was revenge for her brother. Because seemingly so, if she switches or drops it at all, she'll probably like lose any motivation to endure and survive, like the title says. But most memorably, the scene at the end after Sam, Henry, Ellie, and Joel get to where they need to get out of the city limits of Kansas City with a very well lit horde of cordyceps or infected people with cordyceps, while there's a building burning down and there's a big group of people that just now got introduced to what you could only interpret as the level, which is a battle royale. But there was a handicap, and the circle was immediately on anyone going on there. And the panic here is now changed to fear in general. I don't know if it was upgraded or downgraded, but it's the fear of being able to cope or just fear of coping. And this is just in general, even. So, even more scary that you have to, or that you know you are, knowing that it's not very plausible that you should be doing it the way you are, and even knowing what you should be doing, but you are not doing that. And then we get this with Perry and Kathleen again, and a little bit with Joel and Ellie, but Joel's going away from what he usually does, or has gone back to something he's done before. Then all hopes for Sam and Henry that it's just a fluke, that there was no warning signs or even like trip ups for them, and the fact that they included some other people or there are other people to assist them when possibly they could just kept going on their own and never had the end of this episode happen to them. Then we have ourselves episode 6, mm, kin in the most drastically amazing nature like setting ever. Maybe it's because we never hear from Wyoming like that, but I do now want to visit Laramie and wherever it is that Joel's at. But we get to see Tommy's settlement there in the most of the episode. You get a really nice reunion, like with Tommy and Joel, having not heard from him at all from the radio tower and spent 3 months getting to him. I don't know if it's the fact that there's too much possibilities or too much freedom from having to just survive, but Joel and Ellie have a struggling or trifling time there. Like, Joel's almost torn from having someone to depend on and nearly like giving up on Ellie altogether just by passing the duty to someone else. But ultimately, this fear is abandonment. Joel just because he has to, and Ellie because she almost was abandoned. But ultimately, Joel changes his mind and pulls himself together to continue the journey with Ellie. And again, I mentioned before, he just had to fall apart so he could pull himself together and make do with what's happening and what he had. It hits so hard for me that I have to make a little bit of a faux pas and say that Ellie would have had an emotional part too, but she did not cry herself. But it does seem like another Joel centric episode, only for them to leave us with Ellie's anxiety with Joel being impaled with the end of a bat. And in episode 7, we flash back with Ellie to 2 weeks before Joel even thought about her, with Ellie being in some sort of Fedra academy for these soldiers or helpers for Fedra. In the flashback before she gets the bite, even, she's just the same amount of stubborn, but it almost seems like she thinks that's how she should act and what was available to her. But eventually, her best friend and roommate comes back from gallivanting wherever, and we find out it was from into Firefly, and we get a inspired night out at the now defunct mall with recent power running through it, and we get a nice time of the two ladies out. But eventually, circumstance has the a possibility dangled in front of Ellie, and there's a great fear of not getting what she wants and what could have been and all this. Because her friend Riley has to go to Firefly in Georgia, which she had snuck away for initially. With it only being them, we could say they had an intimate time together for her last night in Boston. She has to break this news to her that she was leaving, and on top of her and Ellie getting fresh bites from one of the clickers in the mall. They leave us on a bit of a to be continued, and we don't see any more of this story the rest of the season. But she does mention at the very end on the ninth episode that the vague outcome of that, possibly that Sam wasn't the first time that happened to her, and another night to morning led to another person unavailable to her, we'll say, quite permanently. That episode was called Left Behind, with her being the only one left capable. Joel incapacitated in a house that she just picked and went into. In episode 8, When We Are in Need, we get to see Ellie first experience what Joel has gone through and what horrors and difficulties that ran into his path along the way. And this is only achieved with the fact that he has to fend and take care of the still unconscious Joel. And she runs into some strangers that want the deer that she recently shot, but she tries to scare them off, but she eventually has to barter with them because she finds an opportunity to get medicine. Of course, you can't just warn someone of something like that in this kind of atmosphere. But eventually, through the whole episode, she finds out it was a very bad idea, but does get the medicine for Joel. And I'm sure maybe a very unique horror and experience only to Ellie. All the while, Joel recovers and wakes up to meet up and adjust some henchmen or kidnappers from whatever group or whatever they were trying to say. And eventually, he, through his methods, finds out where Ellie has been, and along the way, finds out the truth of not absolutely doing everything you can, which is a whole fear in itself, even though you are providing for yourself and everything. It leaves some lingering feelings. From what Tommy mentions in episode 6, he only just stole and killed. But we see an example of this of not doing as much as they could or plain doing the wrong thing while they were trying to survive. Further, never justifying any of these people from the group. He eventually finds Ellie, and then he embraces her and finally fully accepts her. Now we finally get to episode 9. Even though it seems as though Joel has found his light, the episode is called Look for the Light, and we have Joel coming full circle to himself from the first episode where he seems about what he would have been like with Sarah, but this time he seems to speak more and he doesn't have to hide certain things so it doesn't give away to us, the audience. You could kind of extract certain things from what he's doing, but he almost seems to follow a certain formula now that he knows he's fully gonna take care of Ellie, even though this circle seems to now just be wrapping around the whole cordyceps outbreak. But that is something we get from the beginning, that he is a man of his environment, but sometimes it doesn't seem like he has goals, or he might not even have any. And sometimes the environment is a person, and he'll maintain that. But the Fireflies find him and ends his trek to find them incredibly abrupt. But he finds out from Marlene, also from the beginning of the episode and ending some sort of circuit, that Ellie would not survive the research and the surgery done to her. So, in efforts to protect her and meeting cruelty with cruelty, he goes and tears his way through the hospital that he's at to get to Ellie. And eventually, because she was anesthetized, she wakes up and Joel is telling her a different story, so Ellie does not seem to feel obligated to continue trying to look for a cure with her body, essentially. Just because that's what most of it is involving, something with her brain. But you might as well just say your whole body if they're gonna try to extract something, or the brain itself. Which leaves off on a little, depending on your opinion of the moral standpoint, uh, debatable and iffy cliffhanger. Overall for the season, it never really lost my attention. Like, I was there every day that it came out. I'm not really one to put a grade on it, but it's A plus in my book. 10, 10 and above. Maybe I'll go down to a 9, so there's more room for improvement. But the sets and the visual journey really got me, because I don't remember too much of the dialogue, but there's certain like expressions that would kind of be more visual or more audible. I guess Bill's note was pretty memorable for lines. But again, it was just like how they were saying it was what really got me. Kathleen had some pretty good things to say too, but even though it kind of made you like want to like shove her or something, just so she would like come to her senses. And Joel trying to warn Ellie to go inside and not to come out until I tell you to. That one was pretty good, but I think that was just because we didn't know too much about Joel's personality yet, or how that they were going to play that. I'm pretty grateful for shows like this that come out and generally that have me reinterpret things and keep me away from thinking that I may be getting too mature or old for certain things, and that I would only just be watching the news from now on. Fairly scary, I know, but that's just a thing that I didn't think I would ever be doing if I was 7 again. Although watching the weather was always and is always great for some reason. But I hope you liked it as much as I did, and if you haven't seen it and you needed a few little spoilers to sell yourself on it, I hope that helped. And that's my review. This has been Sleep Atomic, and I'm Alistair. Hope everyone has a good weekend while we recover and wait for the next show to get our attention. And I'm just letting you know, you look good. Just if no one has told you that recently. And it shows.